Hi, everyone. We're here in Paris at the 9th HIV and Science Conference of the IAS, the International AIDS Society. I'm here with Pablo Tebas hoy. He's a principal investigator at the University of Pennsylvania. And he has a lot of new antiretrovirals and new ways of administrating drugs to tell us about this afternoon. Pablo?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me again. It has been a very interesting meeting. It has been. I was talking with other investigators, and we all mentioned the sensation of déjà vu. That this is the way the meetings used to be 10 years ago, when massive studies were presented in plenary sessions. So that has disappeared a little bit at CROI, because I think the CROI organizers don't like to have the pharmaceutical companies presenting their massive trials. But here, there was a lot of good clinical trials, very large clinical trials, very well done clinical trials presented that I think are very important and going to affect the way we treat people living with HIV in the future. There has been, from the top of my head, and I hope I don't forget some of the important trials, the cabotegravir trial with rilpivirine. This is the latest studies that VIV has presented. This is a study giving cabotegravir and rilpivirine intramuscular every 4 weeks or every 8 weeks to patients. They presented data for 2 years, 96 weeks, and they look incredible. They maintain suppression in every 4 weeks. Nobody failed.
100% success.
No, not exactly. Sometimes patients quit. They say, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want an intramuscular injection every 4 weeks. But when they quit, they were undetectable. Mm-hmm. It's not that they failed.
Yeah.
They quit.
Okay.
But most people stay. And then every 8 weeks, there was only 1 or 2 viral rebounds out of 150. So that's a pretty good number. I mean, we're talking 98, 97% efficacy if people stay on the regimen. So I think the intermittent therapy might be an option for some people. I think it will be an option especially for people that are very adherent, that show up in the clinic. I think people at the beginning, we used to think, oh, these intramuscular injections might be good for people that have difficulty with adherence. No, because if you disappear and you don't come back, you're going to have low levels and you're going to develop resistance. But if you're very adherent, you show up for your visits and you're sick of taking a pill every day and you think this might be an option for you, getting an injection every 4 or 8 weeks. And I think it's the first step to what is going to be the next frontier, which I think is intermittent therapy. So instead of having to take pills every day, taking medications every few months. Right. And that's a step in the direction of the functional cure and cure. That was one of the studies that caught my eye. There was a new drug that they presented a lot of data. Bictegravir is a new integrase inhibitor from Gilead. The nice thing about the bictegravir is that you don't have to boost it. The drugs from Gilead, elvitegravir, you have to give it with covicistat to get levels. So this drug, you don't need covicistat. So they combine it with TAF and FTC, and they compare to what is the standard of care now on unboosted integrase inhibitors, which is Triumec, is abacavir, 3TC, and dolutegravir, and they were identical. The same virological potency, the same, very good. I mean, over 90% of the people maintain suppression. This is 48-week data. It seems that this drug might be a little bit better tolerated, less nausea, although Triumec was well tolerated and people have virological suppression. But this medication might be approved soon, and we will be another drug that we can use to treat patients with HIV.
And is there cross resistance or anything between the two integrase inhibitors?
There were no virologic failures that could sequence. So I think the story with bictegravir is very, very similar to the dolutegravir. That is a drug that is going to take a while to develop resistance. I think we need to learn much more about resistance to bictegravir, but it's looking good. I think in a year from now, I don't know what's going to happen to Gemboya and boosting integrase inhibitors, because when this drug gets approved, it's very difficult to think of a scenario that you will use the other drugs.
Right.
You never know how this field is going to evolve. Merck presented data in another drug, a new NNRTI called doravirine. They compare it not to an integrase inhibitor, they compare it to a tripla, and it was very similar. And also to darunavir ritonavir, very similar potency. So it's definitely in that class, in NNRTIs, is probably the better drug because it doesn't have the neurologic side effects of efavirenz, and it has also a very good lipid profile. So if you're thinking that you want to use an NRTI for whatever reason, that's a good drug to use. Is it gonna be first-line therapy? I don't know. They should have compared it to against an integrase inhibitor.
Right.
So I think still the field is gonna use integrase inhibitors first, and alternatively, if there is a reason not to use an integrase inhibitor, this would be an option for those patients or for people, particular populations with a lot of comorbidities and that you are looking for the lipid profile and you're worried about enough. I don't know. But that might be an area that the drug will be used.
Okay.
And that drug will be approved early next year, I assume. Because these were phase 3 trials.
And as was the bictegravir also, right?
Yep. Bictegravir, I think, is going to be approved in the next year, less than a year, because they presented 48-week data, and Gilead is very proactive in getting approval of the drug. So I suspect early next year we are going to have another drug.
The only doubt I have about the cabotegravir one is that it's two companies, and I don't know how they'll decide to go to the FDA.
But it's two companies, but it's two different drugs.
Right.
So each one, I think, will go separately.
So it's two shots? I thought it was, okay.
It's a pain in the butt, figuratively and literally. But if you're willing to take the pain in the butt, it might maintain your suppression for every...
Great, I didn't realize that. All right.
Yeah.
And for switches, we were talking about switches.
Yeah, I mean, there has been studies looking at the SWORD when you switch to dolutegravir and rilpivirine, maintaining viral suppression and improving your bonds, not earth-shattering. If you are removing tenofovir, you know that you get a little better bonds. There was other study this is from the ACTG, that look at naive patients, that give them, instead of 3 drugs, 2 drugs. This is a big change. Is a paradigm.
First regimen,
naive people. Dolutegravir and 3TC, 90% suppression. So I think BIF is doing now a phase 3 study comparing 2 drugs versus 3 drugs. And if those are equivalent, we are in for a big switch in the way we treat HIV. Because I think people will go, it will be cheaper, people will go to the 2 drugs as opposed to the 3 drugs. You know,
and they're both very well tolerated.
Yeah, and one of them is would be generic.
Right.
I mean, it would be pressure from the insurance companies to try to decrease costs. But you never know how this field is gonna go. But I think that has the potential to be a paradigm shift in how we treat HIV. Instead of 3 drugs, going to 2 as first-line therapy. There were small studies which are interesting, looking at broadly neutralizing antibodies, the BRCO1.
Right.
So the group from Thailand presented a study that they give very high doses of these BNAbs that are very powerful antibodies, and in people that have been treated during acute infection. So treated during acute infection, they gave the BNAbs, and then they stopped therapy. And as it happened with chronically infected, we did that study before, the virus rebound very quickly. It delayed the rebound, but not dramatically, but the virus rebounded. So it tells us that for the virus, it's relatively easy to get resistance to one antibody. And I think the next studies are very clear. We need to do combination antibodies, and this is this is clearly the route that we have to follow. We have to use combination antibodies. But that was a study that was presented here. Tony Fauci gave a talk, and every time Tony Fauci talks, everybody listens. He has been an incredible advocate through his whole career about HIV research. I mean, we are where we are for many reasons, for all the roles of the activists and all the things that were done in the 90s, but Tony Fauci has also played a big role in the whole development of the field. We have been very lucky. And he talked about a study that they did with TAWalk, looking at at NIH looking at a new vaccine with intramuscular injection and electroporation, and then a treatment interruption. It didn't seem to make a huge difference for that, so that was a little bit of a bummer. But he talked also about the administration of broadly neutralizing antibodies maintaining suppression in people. He talked about how intermittent therapy is the next big frontier for HIV care and therapeutics. He talked about gene therapy studies and making the cells resistant to HIV studies similar to what we have done at the University of
He
Pennsylvania.
seemed very positive about those.
Yeah, he's excited about those. And he also talked about the importance of a control in studies that are treatment interruptions. It was a very powerful talk, as usual. And there was another group from Italy talking about gene therapy and modifying the stem cells to make them resistant to HIV. But obviously that modification of stem cells can only be done in people that need a bone marrow transplant, so people with lymphomas. But you have to remember that the only patient that has been cured, Timothy Brown, was cured because he needed a bone marrow transplant.
Right.
So that what they want to do is try to do it more in the allogenic setting, autologous setting, as opposed to the allogenic setting using C34 cells. So,
Here in Paris, right?
yeah.
It's at
He's
the
in
Necker.
Paris.
Yeah,
He's
it's
in
at the
Paris.
Necker hospital. Yes.
Hospital.
Yes. And finally, the little boy from South Africa.
Oh, that's an interesting, and has been in the news. It was in the New York Times before it was presented here, and in the CNN. So this is a kid, I think is a child now because it has been almost 10 years. So this kid was treated during acute infection, and the viral load went down, and he stayed on treatment for almost 2.5 years or 3 years, I think, and then stopped therapy, and he has not rebound for 9 years. So it's like a Mississippi baby, but better, because if you remember the Mississippi baby, it was treated during acute infection. They stopped therapy around 15 months. It's not that they stopped therapy. The mother didn't come to the follow-up. So the baby stopped taking therapy at 15 months and then stayed 2 years suppressed and then rebounded. This kid in South Africa has stayed suppressed for almost 10 years. So it's the closest thing that we have a functional cure.
But like the other one, it wasn't planned that way, right? I mean, for some reason, he stopped treatment.
It's an accident, but I think it's similar to Timothy Brown. Timothy Brown was not planned. I mean, it was planned in some way.
Okay.
It was surprised of how good the whole thing worked.
Right.
I think it's the same thing here. This is the closest we have a functional cure. It's curious because the kid has still DNA, HIV DNA in his cells, but this is defective. And they think that might have contributed to this functional cure because he's making protein that generates an immune response, but because the virus cannot replicate, keeps the virus completely suppressed. So it's like a sort of an auto-vaccination in a weird way. But I'm sure that would be one of the highlights of this meeting. It will be the discussion of that particular kid.
Great. Pablo, as always, thanks a million for all your help,
you're welcome.
all your smartness.